Canada talks about the weather. We talk about hockey, right? There's another shockwave moving through the hockey world and the high ranks of the NHL today as more stories emerge of coaches allegedly mistreating players. The Chicago Blackhawks have placed assistant coach Marc Crawford on leave after several former players say he physically and verbally abused them. There are also new accusations against this man, Mike Babcock. An NHL Hall of Famer is bringing those to light. And Stephen Bull is here to walk us through all of the details. Lots of people with their jaws dropping. These are allegations at this point. Let's begin with those against Marc Crawford, Stephen.
Yeah, and when we first heard these stories coming out, we knew there would be more names. We didn't know what names they would be, though. But Marc Crawford is the latest one. And if you've watched hockey in the last decade or so, you'd recognize his face and his name because he's been a head coach for a number of teams. He's head coached more than 1,100 games, including winning a Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche in 95-96. As you mentioned, he's currently the assistant coach with the Chicago Blackhawks, but placed on leave, was not behind the bench last night for their game against St. Louis. It is important to note that the allegations they're talking about don't involve the Blackhawks as far as we know. In fact, here's what the Blackhawks put out in a tweet last night. Chicago Blackhawks will be conducting a thorough review of assistant coach Marc Crawford based on recent allegations that have been made regarding his conduct with another organization. So those allegations are from a few players, including Sean Avery. Avery played for him years ago, now retired, but those comments he made in the New York Post about being kicked by Crawford, he seemed to walk back on Twitter in a video he posted last night. Have a listen.
All right, I got to set the record straight here. I'm getting a lot of nasty tweets. Marc Crawford had every right in the world to kick me in the he should have spanked my ass a little bit more. I deserved it. I loved Crow. He was my second favorite NHL coach. Fact.
But other players that have made similar allegations aren't walking them back. Patrick O'Sullivan, he responded to the Blackhawks tweet saying that not only is he not backing down, he's looking forward to continuing to talk about this, saying, I talked about his physical abuse in my book 4 years ago, kicking me and other players on the bench. Verbal abuse included homophobic slurs on a regular basis. I look forward to participating in your investigation. And the investigation is ongoing, so the Blackhawks said they won't be making any statement until that is complete.
You're also watching another very familiar face, especially to Leaf fans, Mike Babcock, former coach of the team. What's the latest on the allegations there? Well,
it started with the Mitch Marner story, and then there's some other murmurings here and there, but NHL Hall of Famer Chris Chelios coming out on a hockey podcast and saying not something that happened with him in particular, but with a teammate, Johan Franzen, back when they were playing with the Detroit Red Wings and Babcock was the head coach there. He said that in part, some of the things Babcock said to Franzen on the bench, I don't know what he said to him behind closed doors one-on-one, but he blatantly verbally assaulted him during the game on the bench. Franzen himself confirmed and corroborated those stories in an interview with a Swedish newspaper, saying, in part, I get shivers when I think about it. The incident occurred against Nashville in the playoffs. It was coarse, nasty, and shocking, but just one of 100 things he said, the tip of the iceberg.
I also want to point out to our viewers that we're not just talking about the NHL today. We're also talking about junior hockey and a trainer who was just fired for his conduct. What's the story you're tracking there?
So that's with the Swift Current Broncos of the WHL. The Western Hockey League is part of the Canadian Hockey League, so the Ontario Hockey League, QMJHL as well. These are players 15 to 20 years old at the max, and it's their head athletic trainer and equipment manager. It was in his 10th season with the team. He was let go for what the team is calling a recent pattern of demeaning and derogatory comments, threatening behavior, and unprofessional conduct. So it's not just the NHL, it's not just well-known head coaches, it's junior hockey, and I imagine that we'll be hearing stories from other sports as well, because this can't possibly be isolated just to hockey.